This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you an exclusive interview with Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya M. Scindia. The interviewer is Bhupendra Singh, AIR correspondent.
Very warm welcome in All India Radio News, sir. Sir, my first question is the UDAN RCS scheme is your ministry's flagship scheme, which has been highly acclaimed. How many new routes have been operationalized so far under this scheme, and how many more are in the offing?
उड़े देश के आम नागरिक is an extremely ambitious program to increase connectivity and penetration to the last mile in India. Currently in India we have 14.4 crore million flyers, which talks about a penetration of around 9 to 10% of our total population. It was the Prime Minister's dream and his sankalp that we must democratize air travel, and therefore UDAN is a huge leap forward towards that goal. UDAN is a scheme that was started in 2016. As on date, we have close to about 419 operational routes through UDAN, which never existed before. We have close to 66 airports, waterdromes and heliports that have been established through UDAN, which were never on the civil aviation map prior to the scheme. And through this scheme, we've had close to about 1,80,000 flights till date that have been operated, and close to 95 lakh people who have travelled because of this scheme. That is the revolution that Ude Desh Ke Aam Nagrik has brought for the Aam Admi, the common man in our country. Prime Minister's sankalp was that Hawai chappal pehne wala vyakti bhi Hawai jahaj mein ude, and that has born from a concept to execution and fruition through this scheme. And now we are not stopping at this. We are now starting a small aircraft scheme, which will look at sub-20-seater aircrafts, which will provide that last mile connectivity through smaller aircraft, Cessna Caravans, Beechcrafts, through helicopters, through seaplanes. We have almost close to 7,500 kilometer coastline in our country. There are many other smaller countries and states that have provided connectivity through seaplanes. So we are looking at the SAS, the small aircraft scheme, which we have put in place along with UDAN 4.2. The bids are out, and I'm hopeful we've put in close to about 100 seaplane routes out of the roughly 350 routes that we've put into that bidding round. And I'm hopeful that we will see emergence of many more routes in seaplanes through this new small aircraft scheme. We are now looking at Tier 1 to Tier 2 to Tier 3 cities and increasing that connectivity. There are many stories that are worth mentioning, such as the stories of Darbhanga, such as the stories of Jharsuguda, stories of Rupsi, stories of Kishangarh, where travel through by air was inconceivable. And in the last 5 years, we've had a range of 30 to 40,000 passengers to almost 5 lakh passengers from these smaller cities that were never on the aviation map prior to this scheme being formulated.
Sir, India aims to lend a further boost to its export through the One District, One Product scheme. Do you see UDAN RCS playing a major role in facilitating export by non-coastal districts?
Absolutely. We believe that part of UDAN RCS is also very ambitious program of Krishi UDAN 2.0, where we have brought about convergence between 8 ministries that will provide a further impetus to agriculture and other products of the district to be transported. Where this has comparative advantage is where we have perishable goods, and therefore those being transported not only domestically from one state to the other, for example from the northeast to South India or northeast to Kashmir, but also from one state to the rest of the world. For example, Assamese lemons are being transported today to London. Jackfruit from Tripura is being transported all the way to Germany and to London. And I'm confident that through this, even pisciculture, fisheries department will be able to transport their produce much quicker to other parts of the country and to other parts of the world.
Sir, just a few weeks ago, Indigo became the first airline in the country to land aircraft using the indigenous navigation system Gagan. Which other aircraft operator have agreed to come on board the Gagan system, and what strategy is the government employing in making Gagan globally viable?
You have to understand the concept behind Gagan to start with. And I think this is important for all of us and our consumers also to understand this. What happens when you start increasing connectivity is that there is a certain amount of congestion that takes place. That congestion results in tremendous amount of traffic in mainly the metro areas and the unserved airports as well. which puts in pressure on the air navigation systems known as ANS and the air traffic management systems which are known as ATM. At the end of the day, the ANS and ATM are critical, and I must emphasize critical, in ensuring the safety factor of aircrafts flying. And therefore, the computerized satellite system, which is Gagan or which is known as WAS internationally, Wide Area Navigation Systems, becomes a complement, not a substitute, but a complement to the ATC, to the ANS, to the ATM systems to be able to navigate aircrafts. It's a new technology through which, without human interference, you will have safe piloting and guiding of aircraft down to landing. This has only been done in the Western world, and it is only the innovation capability of our scientists, of our engineers, that has actually made it possible in India.
So the Indian civil aviation market is witnessing a fundamental change with the passenger traffic expected to double by 2030. India is expected to overtake China and the US as the world's third largest air passenger market in the next 10 years. Cater to this rising traffic, there is a renewed push for setting up greenfield airports. Kindly share some details about the new airports that are likely to be operationalized in the next 2 or 3 years.
We are not looking at doubling our traffic by 2030. But hopefully looking at doubling our traffic by 2027, 2028 from current levels. We were at a 14.4 crore discrete travelers in 1920 before the pandemic hit us. This year we closed to roughly about 100 million discrete travelers. I see that going up to 200 million discrete travelers or 20 crores passengers by the year 2025, 26 or so. So I see us doubling in the next 2 or 3 years. In the last year, coming out of a very, very bad pandemic year, we have gone up by almost 72%. Our compounded annual growth rate prior to that has been roughly about 15%, ranging between 10.6% to 15%. So it's one of the fastest growing aviation-led countries in the world today. So having said that, there has to be a focus on both developing infrastructure, increasing the fleet size, as well as putting in place the ecosystem of civil aviation. And as far as developing infrastructure is concerned, I am pleased to inform you that a country with our strength, which had only 74 airports until 2014, that means in 70 years we had built out roughly only 74 airports. Under the Prime Minister's very, very alert eye and his commitment and his direction to the Civil Aviation Department, we have built out close to about 67 new airports, waterdromes, heliports in the last 8 years. I am looking at a target under the Prime Minister's direction at a number of upwards of 200 airports, waterdromes and heliports by the year 2026. So we are looking at increasing today's number by almost 50% in the next 4 to 5 years. Under Airports Authority of India, we are looking at spending close to about 20,000 crores in 42 brownfield projects, expansion of terminals, expansion of runways, building out of runways, etc. Almost about 5 or 6,000 crores odd in 3 new airports, Holongi, Dholera and Hirasar. As far as the private sector is concerned, looking at an investment of close to about 40,000 crores odd in their current brownfield 7 airports, and looking at setting up of 4 new greenfield airports at roughly a project cost of about another 20,000-30,000 crores. And those 4 are Bhogapuram, Mopa Goa, Navi Mumbai and Jewar. You are looking at total capacity expansion and a capex figure of close to 98,000 crores over the next 3 years, which is our target, and the build out of 7 new greenfield airports between the government and the private sector, and expansion plans of 42 plus another 7, so 49 airports in the next 3 to 4 years. Delhi today services 70 million passengers throughput at the airport. The expansion in Delhi will take it up to 100 million. So we will be at the level of New York, JFK, or Chicago, or in Atlanta, one of the largest airports in the world. Bombay today is at 60 million. Navi Mumbai will put in place another capacity of another 30-40 million to start with. Both Bangalore and Hyderabad are between 15 to 20 million today, which will go to roughly about 40 million each in the next 1 year. So you're looking at a capacity of roughly 160 million passenger throughput today, going to above 300 million or around 300 million in the next 2 years or so. So that's the geometric progression of scale that we're looking at in the civil aviation sector.
Sir, in becoming an MRO hub, does India stand to benefit in terms of transfer of technology, and how will this contribute in the skilling and reskilling of the industry labor force?
Today, the MRO industry in India is roughly about $2 billion. 85% of this work is done outside India, and therefore the domestic industry is only 15%. We had a fleet capacity of 400 aircraft in 2014. That, even accounting for COVID period, has grown to a fleet of roughly about 715 aircraft today. We are adding close to about 120 aircraft in fleet size on an annual basis. And therefore, now is the time, through these large numbers of aircraft that are being established in India, that companies look at setting up their MRO facilities in India. We already have many domestic MROs that are set up in India, many companies that are doing close to that 15-20% part of the business. But I would like the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, to come into India. And therefore, even on my visit to the US, that's something that I have tried to push and urge companies to set up MROs in India. There are many that are seriously looking at India, amongst them being Boeing, Airbus, Pratt & Whitney, Safran, and I would urge many more companies to look at India, because this can become a base for reverse engineering, i.e. servicing engines for the rest of Asia or the rest of the globe out of India, because we are geographically also well positioned for that. I have also recast the MRO policy. The earlier MRO policy was extremely regulatory heavy, was extremely rent seeking in its nature. We have completely redone the MRO policy. Royalty has been completely done away with. Rents have been normalized to regular levels. Very clear clauses have been put in terms of renewal, and therefore we have made it much more market friendly to be able to attract companies.
Sir, with the ongoing effort to boost the indigenous demand for drone services, India will need a huge number of drone pilots in coming years. What kind of skill development initiative are being undertaken by your ministry on this?
Well,
front?
after the drone policy has been introduced, I'm pleased to report that we've already put in place DGCA certified almost 15 drone schools. A person needs to be only a 12th standard graduate to be able to apply and go through a drone pilot training course, which only takes about 1.5 to 2 months. As soon as he gets that certificate from the drone school, he will then be eligible for a job which will earn him an income or her an income of almost 30,000 rupees a month, if not higher. And therefore that I see as a huge employment multiplier in India, because we will need at least, I believe, 100,000 drone pilots in the next 2 or 3 years in India, because the applications of drones are tremendous. Both on the manufacturing side, I see this as a huge opportunity. It's an industry which has only a 60 crore turnover today. We put in place a PLI scheme which guarantees it 120 crores in terms of pure incentives only. So double the turnover of today's industry. I see this growing from an investment point of view to close to about 5,000 crores in the next 2 to 3 years. Employment of almost 10,000 direct jobs in this area. So the second most important aspect is the services part of drones. And that services industry, I see that as almost close to a 5 lakh employment generator and close to about a 10 to 15,000 crore industry in the days to come. We have 12 ministries of Government of India that are employing drones as we speak, therefore creating the demand. Drones or any new industry requires 3 legs to be able to stand on. The first is a market-friendly policy, which we have brought about with the new drone policy last August. The second is an incentive scheme, which within 1 month of the drone policy we brought in with the PLI, Productivity Linked Incentive Scheme for drones. The third is the creation of demand, which also we've done through 12 line ministries of Government of India using drones from the get-go as per the Prime Minister's directive. And let me also underline and say this, that it's only because of the Prime Minister that we are today seeing drones on the forefront of the new scalable opportunity. And his dream is that India must not be a follower, but a leader. And we have pledged to ensure that India becomes a global drone hub by the year 2030 as per his direction. Prime Minister has brought about complete transformation in the way we look at opportunities and make sure that we translate them for India as huge employment multipliers and economic multipliers.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to an exclusive interview with Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya M. Scindia. The interviewer was Bhupendra Singh, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.